During the last console generation, Western developed RPGs have kind of developed a bad rap. I mean, if you take away anything made by Bethesda or BioWare, so no Mass Effects, no Dragon Age, no Elder Scrolls or Fallouts, more often than not, people tend to not even realize there were any on the past generations of systems. And that's because a lot of the ones out there really weren't all that quality. I mean, offhand, you've got stuff like Divinity, Risen, Two Worlds. Ugh. So here comes Kingdoms of Amalur, a game that doesn't really break the mold in too many ways, but at the same time is still a breath of fresh air. Now the story begins with a twist worthy of Night Shyamalama Ding Dong himself, in that you're dead, but because of science, you're now no longer dead. And because you've been revived because science, you are now no longer tethered to fate. So take that predetermined destiny and stuff. But much more importantly, you can alter the fate of people around you. And you do so by literally grabbing fate out of thin air and murdering them to death with it. I'm not even joking, that's a thing that actually happens. Rather frequently and often too. Kind of a neat idea, if nothing else. But beyond that, it's your basic story of elves and dwarves. And why is it always elves and dwarves? I mean, I know it's a side tangent, and I know they call them different things in this game, but it's still always elves and dwarves. Okay, next Western developed RPG. I want to help spider people defeat giant cheeseburger monsters. But halfway through this story, I want to betray said spider people and side with the velociraptors and take over everything. That's a badass idea, let's do it. But unlike my kick-ass idea, this is a fairly standard elves and dwarves story of magical beings and non-magical beings being affected by your ability to alter fate. Oh, also there's some giant evil army worshipping some god that may or may not exist, and you'll probably have to fight by the end. On another note beyond the plot, a lot of the quests and side quests in this game are not particularly interesting, and I mean that in the sense that from a narrative perspective it feels like it was designed by someone who makes MMO quests, in that there's so many words and proper names that are just relevant to this game that you generally often get lost. I mean, honestly, beyond the first maybe 4 or 5 quests I took part in, I literally skipped all the quest dialogue and only sort of had a semblance of an idea as to what I was supposed to do by following a dot on the map, as opposed to paying attention to everything else in the world. That's just sloppy design. In addition, this game actually has recorded audio logs, like so many games before it, but it's kind of interesting the way they're done in this game. They're in these giant stones that are dotted around the map, and they're really well hidden, you gotta look for them. And when you interact with them, all the things that the stone has heard since its creation has been recorded and will tell to you. And some of this stuff are bits and pieces of a greater story that might sort of parallel your own adventures, but some of them are just random events that have nothing to do with anything. Like, just check this one out.
And this man will become your lover. He will provide for you, and he will make you laugh, and he will make your life exciting and easier. But, and this is something you can never forget, he must never eat chicken.
There's such a wide range of different lore stones, and because they're so well hidden in the map, it also blends the gameplay with the story. And it's up to you to figure out how much of the story you actually want to learn, and that's always a really cool touch. That's something I really appreciate. Now, the gameplay itself is an action RPG, although if you want to get technical, it seems to stand more comfortably in the action camp than the RPG camp. And I say that because character progression and skills honestly don't have that much of an effect on gameplay. It really is more of an action game with RPG elements, rather than a proper action RPG. Because a character that has level 1 lockpicking as opposed to maxed out lockpicking, really no difference. You can literally pick the hardest locks from the start, with 0 experience. Also, Persuasion, completely useless. Seriously, and that annoys me a little bit. All Persuasion will do is occasionally give you an additional piece of information that isn't really often relevant, or maybe sometimes a few extra potions. Really nothing that breaks new ground. The only skill that really ever felt like it effectively changed anything about gameplay was Detect Hidden, and I suggest if you get this game to pour in at least 5 points from the start into this stat because it is the most useful. And what this does is it allows you to interact with hidden treasure chests and hidden caves all over the map. They are everywhere. Like, there is treasure everywhere in this game, but with this skill, there's like 5 times as much. And there's hidden caves and stuff. It's really cool to see how different the world is with this stat. I really appreciated how different this one ability changed the game. Unfortunately, all the others were kind of completely worthless, and that's a bit of a shame. While we're talking about completely worthless skills, the stealth stat is also completely useless. All it does is increase the amount of time it takes for NPCs to detect you, as well as decrease the range of detection. And let's just be honest here, all the stealth is completely line of sight, which means that when you get down to it, literally all of the stealth in this game is just a matter of numbers working for or against you. Which at the end of the day isn't stealth, it's computational mathematics. And I did not pick a rogue character to have to deal with math. I picked a rogue character so I could sneak around and stab people in the backs, and loot their pockets. Also, bit of a tangent, but why is it that there hasn't been a single game that's done stealth well since Thief 2? Seriously, it's always line of sight, it never relies on weight, or sound, or lighting, or proper hiding, it's always just line of sight. And to further this side note, if you're gonna make a game that's based around stealth, don't half-ass your stealth system, actually make the game about stealth. I'm looking at you, Dishonored. Getting back on track though, while the character progression stats are mostly, well, let's be honest here, worthless, the character's combat abilities are far more useful. You have your standard mage tree, you've got a warrior tree, and you've got a thief tree, each one focusing on their own abilities, as well as having their own weapons to use. Although you can use the weapons no matter what class you are, each one gets like a buff to them. But the impressive thing is how well the gameplay handles this. What I mean is, this game probably has the most fluid and dynamic way of changing combat on a dime. For example, you could start a battle by stealthing up, insta-killing an enemy, smacking the second enemy with a couple daggers, rolling out of the way, swapping to your bow, shooting a couple times, and then finishing the match off with magic. All without ever having to deal with a single menu. Granted, you have to set up your abilities in such a way that you can use all your various abilities per fight, but I would still say that this is probably the most fluid use of different abilities in any game ever. There was no menus, it was just hop into a fight, swap your abilities when needed, swap back when you're tired of it, and just take out your enemy the way that suits you best. And I think that pretty much defines combat here. It's literally whatever you want it to be. It's very dynamic, and it's just a good fun time. Exploration is also tremendous because the environments are so huge. Now there is one gameplay problem with exploration, and that is the camera. The way the camera affects exploration is a little bit annoying. It seems to be a little too tight in on your character, and it seems to be angled slightly downwards. This means that your overall perception of the world is much smaller than it actually is, because this game is huge, but you only see such a small part of it. In combat, the camera's also a little bit weird because it tries to average out space between each of the combatants, which typically means your character's going to be off frame quite a lot, and that's really annoying. So yeah, the camera's a bit crap. But exploring the environments is great. They're all beautiful. There's tons and tons of hidden stuff. I can't stress that enough. Seriously. Each map has like no less than 5 different lore stones in it. And there's an incredible number of hidden treasures and stuff to track down. It's definitely a fun game if you like treasure hunting. Now the last 2 things about gameplay I'd like to talk about are kind of on a down note as well. First and foremost, the level cap is exceptionally low in this game. You cap out at level 40, and this playthrough I only got through the first area, the forest, and I was already halfway there, and I was like maybe a quarter of the way through the world. It feels like there should have been a lot more levels implemented, especially if later on you want to really customize your character's abilities. At best, you can only max out one character tree, and some of the later abilities are definitely worth having, so it's kind of annoying that you're at best only going to be able to get like one. And even worse is, if you're exploring the world as thoroughly as I was, you're probably going to hit the max level at maybe the halfway point, which means that you're not really going to be getting any more levels or experience in the later levels, which means you don't have to invest that time in the world anymore. Unless you really want to, but there's not really much of a point to it, because you'll already have access to the best gear, and there's no leveling incentive. And that's a bit of a shame. The last gameplay mechanic that kind of annoys me is that this game is stupidly easy. For perspective, my first time playing this game through, I played it on the hardest difficulty, using nothing but level 1 gear, and I never once died. So it's incredibly easy. On the other hand, if you're just trying to get into RPGs, action RPGs, or just straight up action games, this makes this game very approachable because it's very, very forgiving. They'll give you health potions like candy, and the enemies aren't too strict. It definitely makes this game an approachable pick up and play title. The audio presentation is relatively well done. The voice acting is a little bit hit or miss though. I noticed that a lot of the characters did sound quite good, but you'd run into quite a few that also sounded like they were voiced by someone's cousin. The songs themselves aren't wildly memorable, and a lot of it is ambient stuff, but overall the music fits the game well. The visual presentation in this game is tremendous. I mean, seriously, have you been watching this? This game is gorgeous. Whoever worked on the visual design of this game, and the environmental design, they need like medals or something, because this game is just super pretty. Don't get me wrong, you're probably only going to see like the first area of this game, the forest, simply because my PS3 exploded and I couldn't get any of my later save games. But there's a decently wide variety of environments. The environments have an amazing sense of scale. Seriously, they're all huge, and they're just pretty. The only thing about environment design that I don't like is the interiors. House interiors are literally copy-pasted, and dungeons, while they aren't copy-pasted, they do feel fairly similar to one another. But aside from the interiors of buildings and dungeons, this game is just gorgeous. Now in the end, I know it sounds like I've been dumping on this game a lot, and the reason is simply this. I well and truly love this game. So it hurts when I see so many blatant problems, such as the wonky camera, or the exposition dumps that follow quests, or the insultingly low level cap. But this game looks gorgeous, and combat will fit literally any playstyle, on the fly, which is impressive. So while this game does have so many problems, I'd still highly recommend it. And I think the thing that just offends me the most about this game is that we're never going to see another one. This game was a company's first attempt, and it's pretty tremendous. Yeah, it's got its share of flaws, but if this game ever saw a sequel where they just cleaned up my few little problems, we might have one of the most amazing RPGs of all time. The problem being that the group that made this game, 38 Studios, has gone bankrupt. This is their one game, and unfortunately, all the assets have since been seized by the state of Rhode Island. And because it's more or less a one-off title, I don't see anyone really interested in buying the IP to try and make a sequel. It's a damn shame too, because this game is tremendous. Yeah, it's got its problems, yeah, stealth is crap, but overall, I would highly recommend Kingdoms of Amalur. Because while it might not stand up to the Mass Effects or the Dragon Ages, although I will argue that this game trumps Dragon Age, but I never liked Dragon Age to begin with. And while it won't beat Elder Scrolls Skyrim, and, well, let's just be honest here, putting any Western-developed RPG up against Fallout 3, they've lost well before the battle even began, compared to the Two Worlds, or the Divinities, or the Risens, this game not only holds its own, it trumps those games by quite a large margin. If you like RPGs, or if you even like action games, grab this game without hesitation, because it is damn good.